Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back here to Maconi Entertainment, and welcome back to the FF1600 Monday Strength of Field race here on Maconi Entertainment. It's myself, Ron Mullins, and Howie Burrows bringing you the action as per usual with Howie working the comms and the cams with me on today's show. We head off to what has been a lake throughout this week, Bathurst, Mount Panorama. This track is not like a teddy bear. It is deadly. This track is not very cute and cuddly, very much so like the country of Australia itself. This track full of things that will kill you in the blink of an eye. Throw rain into the mix of that as well, Howie, and we've got a deadly combination this week.
What a way to tip off a week of a really wet Bathurst is just to actually give us a really wet one on the track. Even though it's not absolutely downpouring out there on the track, it's wet enough to make these cars just lose their minds a little bit as you go up and down the hills, puddles on the side. It's going to be a race where there's those spots that are going to catch people and give them a horrible time. Few regulars have chosen to drop the week, including the series, one of the series sponsors, Frederick Surley, who I'd like to thank from FILMBIL.NO as ever, but he's not here on the track today because he would rather be racing the rookie series at Lime Rock, and many people would be, to be totally honest. But that means we have some new faces here, and that is what this car's going to do to you here.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot of drivers facing the opposite direction compared to where they actually want to face. So this is going to be a very tough race, tough qualifying session that these drivers are currently in the midst of, and keeping track with the strength of field and the average I rating throughout the season. This is actually third of the four races that we have had thus far, off the back of the highest thus far this season at Okayama last time out. We're about 500 below that, went from 44... about 44, nearly 4,500 last time out to nearly 3,900 here at 3,897 for the I rating here today. Taking a look at the weather conditions, you can see 19 degrees Celsius, 26 degrees Celsius, that's for the ambient and track temperature respectively. Translating that from Eurobabble into my own language, because I'm an American with a brain the size of a popcorn kernel, track temperature is currently looking at about 78 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not exactly the best conditions in the world. You know, we usually think about these drivers having to worry about overheating tires. Here, it's just about getting any temperature into the tires. You could probably breathe on them, and they would heat up more than some of the turns would here this week.
Did you see some of those puddles Fraser Smith just had to run over near the top of the mountain? I might be able to get another view. Here's Jason Chan. There's some horrifying stuff to witness up here, let me tell you that. And some of these spots, multiple cars are going to have to run through side by side and hope they don't end up in each other's stuff. I'm wondering if we'll even get an attempt at a second lap from anybody. People will get the first across the line, and if that wasn't clean, that's going to be it. One of the first cars that's going to cross that line is Kieran Shanks. He's on the way, although when I say on the way, I mean there's still about 50,000 miles of track ahead. Here comes the last corner. Puddles everywhere on the inside and outside, of course. He'll be first across the line. Was it clean? 2-minute 22.5. And I think it is official. I've not set up the banner on the side, but I think some of these times are starting to come through.
Yeah, starting to get some times on the board there. You can see Kieran Shanks jumping up there, and I think he may potentially decide to... no, he's not going to call it. He is going to try and go for one more lap. Shanks, one of three separate drivers thus far this season to grab a pole position, the other two being Thomas Fleming and the sponsor of these broadcasts here on Maconi Entertainment every single Monday of Frederick Sorley. Actually started from the pole last time out at Okayama. This is the first wet race that we've had from this season, though, and these FF1600 cars rather notorious for being they handle the wet weather conditions about as well as a baby would handle getting thrown into a deep end of the pool. So, and that proves it right away as we jump to the number 4 car with a big slide coming out of the chase section. One of the only alterations made to this track in the years that it's been around. That was James Becker with the spin heading off to that section of the racetrack as we look to see some more drivers trying to set some lap times on the board, heading our way down into the final turn. Murray's Corner with the killer puddles all around there. That's Brandon Nagelvort. Let's see what he can set here as he comes across the line, jumps up to 4th.
Just getting your lap clean has been an achievement for plenty of these drivers, and quite a few have failed to do it. Graham Rory Hunt sideways as I look at him. Callum Boyson, I don't know if he'll make it in time. He will make it in time, but that car's in one piece. Chris Wetz is done. Jason Chen is going to be very limited on time. Ellis Spice hasn't been seen on these broadcasts in quite some time. He's also going to quite struggle to make it to the finish line in time. This track's usually quite the draft track. You want to stick with the train. You want to absolutely get behind others, and it can lead to some pretty dumb tactics. But I don't know if we're going to be seeing the same sort of behavior today, because I think there's going to be a lot of people just trying to survive out on these puddles.
Yeah, I'm not sure if y'all had in the UK, but we certainly had it in the US, the Scholastic Book Fair coming to school, and they would always have these I Survived books talking about people surviving, like, really bad events in history, you know, natural disasters, whatever the case may be. I feel like there is ample opportunity to make an I Survived book about this week here on iRacing. I said right at the start of the show that Bathurst, it's not a cuddly racetrack, this, and then you throw rain in the mix, and just creates a really unfortunate set of circumstances for these drivers. The FF1600s, rather notorious for not handling wet weather too well. All-purpose, all-weather tires on these cars, so we don't have to worry about the matter of some drivers maybe deciding to run on slick tires, others deciding to run on wet tires. No, it's exactly the same tire for either conditions, which is a blessing and a curse. On one hand, you won't have to worry about the tire compound debacle. However, these tires don't really work too well in the dry, and certainly don't work too well in the wet either, as qualifying has now officially wrapped up. Some drivers actually getting some clean lap times on the board here. The top of two splits that we've got here proving not to be a very popular week, probably because of the rain, if we're being completely honest. But let's take a look at the starting grid. Kieran Shanks will start this race from the pole position, continuing on his streak of grabbing the pole in the even races after a pole in week 2 at Sebring. Fraser Smith going to join him on the front row. Second row is going to comprise of Sam Spinell in P3, with Callum Voisin starting this race in 4th. Looking right beyond on road number 3, it's going to be Brandon Nagelvort starting alongside Mario Ross. And then looking right behind on row number 8, we will see Nato Braun and Timothy Parker Russell. And then finally, rounding out our top 10 will be Gregorio Buscemi and Ian Anderson.
8 more cars making in this week. Florian Usch and Jason Chen make up 11 and 12, and the final lap time is Stephen Verweyen. Then behind, James Becker, Graham Rory Hunt, Chris Wetz, Ellis Spice, and Albert Severick. There we go, making up our last position on the road. That marks every driver, the rest ranked by their I rating, of course. 20 minutes should be around 8 to 9 laps, pending on conditions. It's going to be a rocky road, and I think drivers are going to want to do their best to keep their cars to themselves today.
Yeah, this is going to be the week of all weeks where those incident points may be a bit of a thorn in the side to these competitors. Again, folks, this is the official FF1600 series. This is not a league race. We'll just cover the top split action here. And 17X is that DQ limit, so these drivers will have to worry about that in the race that lies ahead. Want to once again touch on the track conditions. 75 degrees Fahrenheit now for the track temperature. And looking at ambient temperatures, not too bad, or at about 66 degrees Fahrenheit, so really not that great when it comes to the track temp or the ambient temp, and most certainly the tire temp that run down off into hell corner of turn number 1. Probably gonna claim some victims before we even settle into a groove in this race. Lap 1 going to be probably the most treacherous from the entirety of the season, as it looks like we have got everybody lined up on the starting grid, waiting for that green flag to come out, which it has now, and the drivers are on their way as they try and find their way to get onto full throttle down into turn number 1. Kieran Shanks going to jump out into an early lead. You can see everybody else following, and soon Fraser Smith looking to just have a clean start and maybe get a move done as they head their way down the mountain straightaway off into turn number 2. Everybody being very ginger as they head their way out of turn number 1, avoiding that massive puddle on that outside line. These puddles probably going to have a kill streak by the end of this race.
Saw Sam Spinell trying to make the left-hand side work, changes it up, goes right, getting past Fraser, heading right up the mountain immediately. Now Fraser, I think, has a faster exit on the inside, though, and they're going to run side by side as they run up. And we start I don't know the names of all the corners around here, I'll be totally honest. You may have done a few more Bathurst broadcasts than I have, but even this sprint race is going to lead to a lot of attrition. There's contact already. Fraser Smith glued to Brandon Nagelvort. They're actually free from each other before an horrible incident there.
Yeah, they get unstuck from each other before disaster breaks out right at the top end of the circuit, heading out of Griffin's Bend 5 and 6. It's interesting, not even iRacing knows the other corner names around this track because they actually had it wrong. I had to correct the iRacing track map before I did the Bathurst 12 show a little bit earlier on this year, which, funny how that sort of stuff works. Kieran Shanks holds on to the race lead right now, about a quarter of a second between himself and Sam Spittle. They've tried to break out to their own little pack up at the front as a little bit farther behind, as that's Nato Braun, I believe. Actually, that's Mario Ross. He spins, heading off to the dip. We're going to impact the wall. That's going to take Mario Ross out as Fraser Smith and Brandon Nagelvoort come to blows at Force Elbow.
Fraser Smith and Nagelvoort in contact, and Smith's the one just down and out. Nagelvoort also meatballed and flying back in terms of pace. I think neither driver quite had space, but Fraser's the one that ate the wall on the outside there. We might be able to get a replay of that in time, but a lot more carnage is happening on the track as we approach the puddles down the hill. It is Nato Braun's car in P7's managed to go side by side with James Becker and actually clear it up. Becker's fast on the exit here.
Yeah, and look at Jason Shen. He'd be there to pick up the pieces in that number 15 car in case these two drivers come to blows side by side down into Murray's corner. Turn number 23. Look at a bit of a wiggle there down through the braking zone for Becker, but he's going to jump into the race lead. Kieran Shanks and Sam Spindle were briefly battling for the race lead, but Shanks still holds on to it as they're side by side yet again right behind. This time it's Nato Braun and Jason Shen duking it out for P8 with Graham Rory Hunt trying to make a charge up to the front. He was disappointed with his performance in that qualifying session and looking to make up some ground as he's now broken his way into the top 10. I say that though, he's running off the track and into the wall. Graham Rory Hunt gonna take himself out of this race and maybe the worst commentator's jinx I have ever thrown in my history of broadcasting.
That must have been some sort of hardware failure. That's not really where the car's meant to go. By the way, pour one out for Florian Usch and Chris Retz as well, who both also took meatballs in incidents that we'll have to recap at the end when we have time. This top three, I think, are going to race each other quite hard, but they might wait for that draft period as they headed down the hill. There were a lot of controversies flaring on in my ear and voice chat all at once, let me tell you that. Ian Anderson's at 5 seconds back. He holds off Parker Russell and Giorgio Buscemi, along with James Becker in the back. Lots going on and lots in my ear as well, trust me very much. I'm just going to have to try and unpack some of this while you deal with the rest.
Yeah, I was going to say a few moments ago that we had more meatballs than an IKEA cafeteria, but I think we've got more beef than a Wendy's commercial at the moment. We have a whole buffet here in this race today, and looking to see who's going to be cooking today and who's maybe going to burn down the kitchen. Kieran Shanks still holds on to the race lead over Sam Spindle. Spindle actually off the back of a win in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors race this past Sunday, so looking to see what he can do here this week, as that was a little bit of shuffling going on there with Spindle. Speaking of him jumping out into the race lead over Kieran Shanks, Callum Voisin still slotted in at third. They've broken away from Ian Anderson, who's got a challenging car right behind. That's Timothy Parker Russell, the challenger in that situation. And look, James Becker trying to turn this 2-car battle into a 3-car battle. He's slowly but surely reeling in these racers in that number 4 machine. We'll maybe try and get involved in that battle sooner rather than later. In the meantime, though, Sam Spindle, I think, has had a bit of a sideways snap as he's dropped down from the race lead back into third. Callum Voisin has got a move put on him, and Shanks has been able to jump out into the race lead. I wonder if it may have been the puddle coming out of Murray's corner. Let's see.
Is Sam Spindle's car was a big part of that battle, and you're very right. It's just quite far off that pack now, 7 tenths. So it's the 1, 2, and the 8 here, and on the outside line, and he's all in that battle. He doesn't have a snap, but I think he just has to run the car slow in order to prevent it being a bigger problem and a snap in there, so he loses a lot of time. We're going too wide up the hill for P4 here. Ian Anderson leads the pack over James Becker. Parker Russell and Buscemi back out, but I think they're still in this. This makes a really, really, really interesting 4-car chase. Becker up the inside on the left-hander, but that doesn't get it clear whatsoever. Anderson ducks out back in front, and these drivers are the ones really jostling in an exciting way.
Yeah, they're giving us a good battle to talk about right towards the tail end of the top 10, occupying P4, P5, P6, and P7 respectively, running all by themselves as you have to go a little bit farther up the road, 6.5 seconds farther up the road, in fact, to find your top 3. Have to go back. Oh, no! Anderson! He snaps. Oh, and he gets T-bone clobbered big time by Buscemi, who's going to slide down the track bobsled style on his lid. Contact being made as they headed their way out of McPhillamy Park. I think that right there was a simple case of Anderson hitting that puddle, hitting the curb, spinning around like a top, and nothing there that Gregorio Buscemi could do to just clobber him there. That was an almighty collision between those two racers at the top of the hill. They're both going to be done for in this race. Meanwhile, Kieran Shanks, Callum Voisin, and Sam Spinell still continue to battle as we just saw a pretty nasty collision a little bit farther behind. It's a good thing we're in sim, otherwise we'd probably have to pour out a drink and read out a eulogy.
So, there was a bet in the chat before the race where we see the race done with about a third of the cars entering the pits, and I can confirm that makes about half. So that bet has been well and truly conquered, and we're not really truly done with that yet. There is a fast repair available for drivers that feel like getting back out there. It's a very long tow on this track, but once you get that done, you can make it back out and keep driving. A few have left, but a few have sort of returned to the track. I think Fraser Smith forgot to turn it on, or maybe, no, I think he just stayed out of the car after that incident. But a few others, some just didn't, some like Florian Hughes left, while others are out here a few laps down, probably won't get in the way. His Callum Voice stuck on the back of Kieran Shanks, doesn't quite take the pass here. Might start seeing some more dramatic moves near the end of the race, but for now, I mean, these guys don't really know what's been going on behind them, I don't think, but I think they know that it's a scary, scary track out there.
Yeah, I think they know that it's going to be a treacherous race, and that's certainly been their philosophy up to this point, just taking it easy. As a result of the drama that we saw a few moments ago, about one lap ago, in fact, when Ian Anderson spun right in front of the field, and Gregorio Buscemi had nothing to do but slam into the side of Anderson. It's actually cut this battle down in half. It's now two cars duking it out for the final two spots inside the top 5. Becker and Russell currently involved in that little battle pretty much all alone in this field presently. We are expecting some drama. We have most certainly got it. We already have 5 drivers out of this race, as Chris Wetz and Brandon Nagelvort may have just potentially joined some racers. I'm not really sure what we're seeing at the moment. Actually, no. Ian Anderson and Gregorio Buscemi have rejoined the race in the other 9 and 12 cars respectively. They repaired the damage. They've let bygones be bygones, and they're back out there on the racetrack. I think we could maybe see Mario Ross potentially rejoin, as he's still in the pits, albeit has been there for quite some time, so that may be slightly unfounded rumors for me.
If you're still here and you're still enjoying this, we do salute you, because it's been a bit of a unique experience out there on the track today. But I'd let you know that Road Atlanta Short is up next week, which is going to be so different than Road Atlanta last time, as we skip all of the long straights. We run the S's and then we fly right around down the final turns to do it again. Very, very interesting layout, and one of those short tracks on the surface again that are going to really keep these cars close. Kieran Shanks runs away quite a bit there. Spinell and Voice sort of hold each other up a fair bit. They need to stay within enough range to stop him from running away. There's a lot of draft down these straights, and there's still half the race to go. So I don't expect that you can get away with 7 attempts, but you would quite like to, I imagine.
Yeah, I think if there's any race where you want to be able to just go about the end of it, not having to worry about some pressure behind and just have to worry about keeping the car on the track, this is probably it. We have seen already this track has taken a bite out of many a racer. And yeah, I think if you're Kieran Shanks, you really want to have a good, comfortable cushion at the end of this race. Even if you're a little bit farther behind, just being there at the end, making it to the end of this race, I think will be just as much of an achievement as winning the race over anything else. As that right there was James Becker nearly hitting the wall coming out of the cutting up the hill. And you mentioned the next round of the championship at Road Atlanta on that short configuration. Anybody who's ever seen that track, it cuts off the bottom end and makes the track look like a funny chicken nugget in my book.
There's a lot to go over, and I think now might be a decent time to start looking at some of it, to be totally honest, because otherwise we might be here for at the end of the race longer than we were in it. So if we just sort of go in chronological order, we might eventually work things out. First of all, the meatball flag for Mario Russ, and I have an event log, I'm just going to start clicking through things. We're going to work things out together. That is not a good blimp cam. I mean, I hate to tell you, you can't really see anything. Here's Mario's car, slips out in the turn. This is sort of a sign of things to come, but that wasn't really too dramatic in itself. Fraser Smith is the one that really sort of kick-started a lot here. Side by side with Brandon Nagelvort. I might have to try and get some on board to this as we run down the hill because trees are going to get in the way, but it looks like he's rear-ended quite hard coming down the hill. That's not, so yeah, that was about as useless as I thought it would be, but don't worry, we have the power and the technology here. So here's Fraser Smith's car heading down. We might help to get Brandon Nagelvort, actually. Fraser having to slow down quite a bit. That's the bump, and that's going to send him out wide then. Into the wall. He did not have much room to move there on the inside line.
Yeah, no, that right there was just a consequence of going side by side in a very tough part of the racetrack to go side by side through. That's tricky enough in the dry, let alone in the rain. The contact hang down in, though, really kicked it off from the start. I gotta say, Fraser Smith, unfortunate there. I would say that he's probably the innocent bystander in that situation. Got the bootscoon boogie heading down the hill into the turn, and then really just got shown the door on the exit. Very unfortunate there. I'm sure Fraser Smith not happy with Brandon Nagelvort at all, and I'm sure Brandon Nagelvort is probably thinking that Fraser Smith dropped the anchors very early and caused that contact in the first place. Let's take a look at the drama hang down the back straightaway. Holy cow! Contact being made heading down a straight and spinning off into the wall in a rather dramatic fashion there. That right there, you can see the 11 car. That was Chris Wetz involved in all of that. I believe the other car involved in that collision was Nato Braun. And let's see this from an aerial view.
Used, but you've had a notable pattern for blaming Nato Braun for crashes he wasn't in today. That was Florian Oost, the other car down that straight. We'll get back to the rest in a bit because this main pack has actually compressed back up as I go back. Callum Voisin's around.
Oh, and there's going to be a careful rejoin here. He's going to have to pull off this three-point turn quickly. Be careful here. That is going to be a very treacherous moment as we ride on board with him here in the M&M's machine, heading his way. He got away with it for sure. Oh, dang, there you go. It's not the worst bit of contact, frankly, spinning off to that section of the track. I think we saw it with Mario Ross right at the start, or actually, we'll continue on my streak of saying every incident is caused by Nato Braun and say that it was Nato Braun that hit the wall off through there where he was running up towards the front. But that moment there, very lucky that that wall contact was... that could have been a heck of a lot worse. Thankfully for him, his bag of M&Ms didn't fully burst.
That makes two up the front and makes me wonder how they're going to play it as well. More cars, I think, have experienced brutal crash damage here and are going to make it out in one piece. And there's very little left in it, but 5 minutes to go. 3 laps, 7, 8, 9, I think, on time. So we're going to run this back down the main straight. Sam Spinell and Kieran Shanks, one after another. Here's Spinell to the inside. There is pace in that draft. And then you sort of like lose it a little bit as you get side by side, but that momentum was enough to clear him out in front. It's going to really matter in the last few laps where you are in these last few corners and last few straights. Until then, it's going to be a little bit of trading as we move up the grid. Worth noting, by the way, that Becca and TMP Parker Russell are playing very much the same game with each other, 11 seconds back, but they are doing very similar things around the track.
Yeah, I think as everybody else is basically just biting each other's flesh off and ripping limb from their competitor. These two, it's like the difference between like a pit bull named Princess who will kill everything in sight and a pit bull named World Destroyer 5000, which is the most like tame animal you can ever have. Outside of the drama that we saw from Ian Anderson and Buscemi, which frankly that really wasn't a like sick collision. That wasn't drivers running each other off the road and being upset. That was a simple mistake and really nothing that Buscemi could have done to avoid making contact. It's been rather tame, and this was really the only bit of drama. And I gotta say, one of the most dramatic part of this race, huge contact and sliding down on his lid, taking a little off the top, so to speak, as he took that wild approach. I had a feeling with the FF Weekend Warriors race on Sunday that a driver was going to ballpark it. We nearly saw Buscemi ballpark it there as a result of that contact. That is a huge hit, and there goes a roll bar cam.
We lost the roll bar cam somewhere at the top of the hill. If someone can go find it, that'd be very, very helpful. Let me tell you that. Here comes Ian Anderson on the top of the hill. I'm just curious if something triggers this or no. It's just a big fat puddle on the side. So that's another one that bites the dust. But it was a VR failure that saw Graham Rory Hunt, I believe, to sort of fly off the track in his own way. Didn't catch anyone in the way. Here's Anil Beverick as well, having a bit of a solo slip and slide, I think, up and around. There might, and that's one more to go. And we'll give one more for good measure. No one's had a good day today. Not heard Alice Spicer's name in a long time here. I was excited to see it, but I did think, how's this going to go wrong on a track like this today? It was that braking zone that did it in for Ellis. This is sort of diabolical to give to a D-Class series, to be totally honest.
Yeah, this is absolutely brutal. I remember doing the broadcast for the Bathurst 12 earlier on this year, and the amount of people who, for lack of a better term, had their panties in a twist about that race being held in the rain you would not even believe it. And to have the rain in this series, and in cars that, frankly, I mean, I love the Formula Ford, but this car is a pain in the butt to handle in dry conditions, let alone in the rain. We saw that there. I mean, the puddle heading out of the curb, that curb is super duper high, so you head your way out of there, even in dry conditions. If you even look at that curb the wrong way, you're going to go for a spin. But these cars, they're low to the ground. The floor is essentially flat, and the tires are designed to do well in both conditions, both dry and the wet, so they don't really displace water too well. These cars are about as susceptible to aquaplaning as you could possibly imagine a car being. I think you'd probably have a better chance turning a boat off through any sort of puddle than you would here in these FF1600 cars. So these racers are they're having a time, that is for sure. It's been a very tough week. It's part of the reason why many of the regulars aren't showing up this week, because they're saying, you know what, I'll just use this as a drop round. I'll pick the occasional race that's actually dry. I mean, I remember last season's race here at Bathurst was particularly chaotic, even though we were running that in bone dry conditions, with Renz Brookman taking the W in that week on his way to last season's championship here in the FF1600 official series. But regardless of the challenges they've had up to this point, we're now on the final lap. Kieran Shanks and Sam Spinell have about 0.3 of a second between the two of them as they start this white flag lap. And I wonder if Shanks is going to have to defend down into 2, or if the chase is going to be the spot that Spinell really tries to go for the overtake.
Make this the final lap and the final run. Side by side, the 1-2. Inside line, preferable for a bit as you head up the hill, but being behind is probably where you want to be, down that straight. So you kind of want to be a little bit behind and safe, but in a close enough range to get the draft and the pass. I reckon the driver behind will try and go for it. But there's a lot of games being played about who gets to be behind. I don't think Kieran runs full speed when he's passed. I think he wants to be in a certain place. There's a little bit of tactics here.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's going on. If you're leading, heading out of Forest Elbow onto the Conrad straightaway for the final time, you're probably going to be in for a world of hurt. And I can't necessarily blame Kieran Shanks for trying to play chicken a little bit with Sam Spinell. We'll have to see if one of them just parks the bus heading at the bottom end of the hill. These these cars aren't the strongest drafters in the world, but they're just strong enough whereby you can mount a pretty good challenge even with these rain-soaked conditions. The main thing is just having the bravery to go side by side down to the chase. Look at Spinel! Holy cow! Oh no, it doesn't work. He went for the dive. I think Shanks maybe overslowed down in there. Spinel said, you know what, thank you very much, I'll take this, and then he loops it around. That'll pretty much hand the victory to Kieran Shanks. He certainly gave it the old college try as we ride on board with Sam Spinel and see his perspective in this drama down into Forest Elbow. He went for the lunge. I don't even think that was Kieran Shanks parking the bus. I think that was just Sam Spinel going for the dive of a lifetime there and just was not going to work. Handle with care. The fragile stickers on that car. It was a fragile move. It was bound to shatter. Unfortunately for him, he's not going to get the win. Instead, Kieran Shanks, in his first time this season here in the FF1600s, going to round his way around the final corner to score the victory today here at Bathurst. There's the win for Shanks. He's victorious here today, going to convert a pole to a win. And what a drive from him, able to hold off the challenge from Spinel right behind and just put on a pretty darn good drive in a very challenging race for these drivers.
Got a line that might make you proud. I think he might have put the spin into Spinel. Clap me, Ron. Big pass with P3 on the final turn. We sort of caught just the background of this, but this was James Becker and Timmy Russell. Okay, never mind. There was a lot of contact in there, but actually, that was Callum Voisin. That was Callum Voisin that spun leading, and he just about passed over Parker Russell for fourth. Let's just catch this in a couple more angles, and then I'll get out of here for the first time in my life. I'm a stiff drink. Going into that turn. Oh, he mounts the curb. Coming in. Parker Russell not quite fast enough over the line. A few more things that happened because trust me, I kept notes. I kept notes of everything that happened. I think we caught Callum Voisin at the top of the hill. Yes, we did. This is how we left that top three battle. I mean, every corner was a new treacherous journey. There just wasn't tyre temp, but even in the dry portions of the track, that little elevation change got him. Giorgio Buscemi wasn't done, unfortunately. The EMTs cleared him to return to the track almost immediately after the fact, and it didn't really stop him from wrecking the car. Yeah, and this one a bit less brutal. It's a lot of the dry portions of the track that are catching people. Very unusual ways. It's Jason Chen with one of the remaining meatball flags of the race. He towed to the track after this. Where is it? Where is it? He does have a crash test
there
on
it
his
is.
car. It's unfortunate. It's down that dry part of the hill every single time. And finally, Alice Spice couldn't be spared from one more accident. Unfortunately, the timing of this replay makes me think it's going to be the same turn, Ron. The same braking zone. There's water on the braking zone. I don't know how you're meant to brake into that turn. I was at a very wet Formula Ford festival last year. I'm going to be going back this year. It's a business expense, you see. And trust me, those cars looked easier to drive than these sometimes. Let's get those final results.
Yeah, let's take a look at it here. Here is how they all shook out at the end of this race. 20 minutes long, 20 minutes of drama, chaos, all the sorts, and drivers cursing the rain gods. Kieran Shanks is your winner over Sam Spinel in P2. James Becker rounds out your podium in third. Timothy Parker Russell and Callum Voisin going to complete your top five with Nato Braun slotted in sixth. Stephen Verweyen in P7. Ellis Spice is classed in eighth. Ian Anderson in ninth. Gregorio Buscemi rounds out your top 10. A lot of the other racers ran into some difficulties, had the falling anvils crash on them. We'll just run through. It's Chris Wetz, Jason Chen, Anel Bresovic, Brandon Nagelvord, Graham Rory Hunt, Mario Ross, Fraser Smith, and Florian Utz completing your 18 drivers that were classified at the end of this race. And tune in next week to see the action from week number 5. That'll be at Road Atlanta on the short configuration, the funny chicken nugget, as I called it a little bit earlier on in this show. And I hope you will be able to enjoy that along with all the other action here on Maconi Entertainment. Gives you a good reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on any of the racing action. But as for this broadcast here for week number 4 of the FF1600 action here at Bathurst, a rainy Bathurst with jittering trees there on the infield. Really speaks to the weirdness of this week. I think that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Mullins, and Howie Burrows working the comms and the cams with me on today's broadcast, I say thank you all so very much for tuning into the action here on Maconi Entertainment today, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too distant future.